You are listening to the Bill Podcast with me, Natalie Rolls. Brought to you in association with GeorgeFairbrother.com, shop.saturdaymorningpress.co.uk and cityfiction.co.uk. Hello and welcome back to part 2 of my special trilogy with the wonderful Raji James. This time we do a deep dive into Raji's time on the bill, discussing key storylines, some of our co-stars, behind the scenes politics, and how and why Raji left the series. Raji also shares his experiences of joining EastEnders and recalls his famous death scene in Doctor Who. Just before then, I'd like to quickly tell you about the new book by our sponsor, Michael Sealey. In 1963, the BBC tried something different with a new soap opera. Rather than create another Coronation Street, emerging playwright David Turner devised Swizzlewick, a bold, satirical comedy set within a Midlands town council, populated by outrageous stereotypes with enormous character flaws. Its broadcast in 1964 outraged local government and panicked the BBC, who soon came under fire from Mary Whitehouse's Clean Up TV campaign. What happened next? Find out in Michael Sealey's brilliant book, Taste and Decency, The Swizzlewick Story. Out now from shop.saturdaymorningpress.co.uk. You had some great stuff in there.
I did, yeah.
You had Complicity. Complicity was your first headliner of a storyline.
I think Complicity was the one with Guy Oliver Watts, which was, and Russell Tovey.
Yes.
In one of his first TV roles, if not the first.
Yes.
And it was the car stealing.
Oh, that was brilliant. Yeah. You went undercover and you did it all on your own. You didn't want help.
We were in a car park where they did this big car meet, where you have loads of people with souped up cars all revving their engines. Yeah. And that was in this big car park in Croydon. And weirdly, another thing I found out years later was one of the young girls that was there draped over one of the cars was a girl called Pooja Shah, who ended up playing my sister when I was at EastEnders.
Oh, wow. That is cool. Was that Richard Hamford? I think that was
still Richard, yeah. Yeah.
The lovely Richard Hamford.
Yeah, it was lovely.
He was one of those people, he would talk and, if you bumped into him, you'd have a chat.
He always had time for you.
Who was the funniest to work with?
That chopped and changed. I mean, at first, I think George was just unbelievable to work with. His ability to be so funny and ridiculous and just bonkers. And then in a split second, he'd be very serious, and really professional, really kind of like, stop messing around now. And you'd be like, you were literally messing around, you. Yeah. Jed Simmons was very, very funny because I remember one night we got to a point where we were counting how many times I said, yes, Gov. And it was just getting to the point, I think we were up to about 16 in one act. And he would just look at me and go, not again. That's all I've got to say. Yes, Gov.
Oh, love Jed.
He wrote a book. I read that book.
Ben Payton's just had a book released.
I've seen that on Twitter. I have seen it on Twitter. I saw a picture of Maddox with it in an airport, I think.
For her holiday reading, yeah.
Yes.
Have you seen her at all? Have you bumped into...
I've seen no one. Seen no one. part of that's I live quite a quiet life, really. I sort of keep myself to myself. But yeah, I don't really do socializing.
Are you big on the old Instagram, Twitter, or any of that? Do you know?
I'm on them. I've got them. I've got Instagram, which I've set to private because I was getting, especially when I joined Hollyoaks, when I first started there, it was like instantly 100 requests, like overnight, and so I've kept them. I keep it on private because I'm not someone who shares an awful lot of stuff. I might post something every now and then on Twitter to say, you know, what the hell are this government doing? Or, oh my God, that's ridiculous. Or if I find something particularly funny or something educational that I think other students that follow me might want to be interested in, you know, but I don't really understand social media, to be honest. I know people actually make money from it. I don't get that.
It's quite gossipy, it can be, and I think if it had been around our time when we were at the Bill, I think Scott Maslin was probably one of the first to go on one of those platforms. I think I remember thinking, what's he doing? He's always on his phone. Like you, I'm a little bit more, I want to be out there and enjoying the day. I can't be, I'll do bits and pieces. But that's interesting because like lots of people use those vehicles when they're in shows. Like you're in Hollyoaks. I know Carl Collins and Chris Simmons. Did you meet them up there at all?
No, they'd all gone by the time people talk about Carl quite a lot. He's very, very liked up there. And I mean, I used to love working with Carl. I remember we did a sequence of scenes. I think it was in the build up to the race riots and firebombing of the station, and we got to one point where we realized we'd essentially played the same scene about 6 or 7 times across 4 or 5 episodes, you know, but the scene itself had the same information in, so it'd be him telling me I was out of order and that he wasn't going to keep my secret anymore, and me saying just give me another day, blah blah blah. And we just got to the point where it was almost like it was word salad, and we'd have to kind of try and think, what day of the show is this? What part of the story is this? Because it's exactly the same scene with the same information, and the only way we could work out what was happening was looking down to see which colour tie we had on. Oh yes, the blue tie. Oh no, it's the red. It's the red tie app.
Oh, I love those. Oh, it was like that though, wasn't it? You had to find your way and balance.
Yeah, because
the day.
Some days you'd be filming, you know, a scene from episode, say 1 in the morning, and then you'd be in a scene from episode 6 in the afternoon, and then it'd be a night shoot from episode 3, and then you'd be, you know, next day you'd be doing something from episode 2, and it's like, where am I in the story? Yeah. I don't know which bit this is, you know.
Yeah. I remember laying out the scripts and doing the stickies, trying to colour coordinate. And it was just, there weren't enough stickies. This is ridiculous. This is just none of it is doing that. It was, I think that was when it was going into the 2 1 hours a week.
Yeah.
Right. That was crazy.
And also we had those apps where we suddenly got told we were doing, oh, this is a post-watershed episode, you know. So now you can say bloody, or you can actually grab the person instead of look like you've grabbed them. And it was all sort of slightly different rules that we could do.
What about the punch? What about the Simpson knockout punch in the... Oh, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
That was... I'd forgotten about those. I mean, you know what it's like when you're in it, you don't really watch it. So when you recall stuff back, that whole thread was brilliant. If that was played out now, I wonder how differently that would have been written, or if it would be written in a different way. How did that feel for you?
At the beginning of it, I was quite, I hate to say it, I was quite suspicious it was going to be done badly. There was a lot of occasions where people would ask me questions because it was to do with race, and they'd say, "Oh, do you think that's realistic?" Or do you and I sort of started taking offence because I thought, "Why are you asking me? Why are you not asking the white guy?" standing there? Why, you know? But I think that was about more to do with me being oversensitive than it was about them trying to get it right. Do you know what I mean? And I misread the situation a little bit. So it took me a little while to, I think, while doing it, to get into how valid it was, and actually how really hard everyone was working to get it right.
Right, yeah.
And I think, in fairness, the main success of it was down to
Mark Frost.
Thank you. Yes, brilliant actor. He was just absolutely brilliant. And every day that he was there, he brought this energy where he played that really fine line of the upstanding businessman who had this awful nastiness underneath him. And he was right on that line. So when I started doing scenes with him, it came to life. And then it all made sense. That was the other thing about the bill that I didn't really fully appreciate until years later, was all of the brilliant actors that we got to work with, and all the little bits of information and technique that you'd pick up off them and learn and kind of hopefully become a better actor by working with them. You know, it's a huge opportunity. Love that. Just wish I'd have appreciated it more at the time.
I think everyone says that. I think we had, you know, like the appreciation for the job, the people, the whole setup was enormous. And yet there's that part of your brain a little bit like when you did EastEnders East and you think, yeah, I'm going to go on and do this and you know, and it's like you have this, I don't know what it is. I'm so grateful for the people I met.
Yeah.
The talent that threaded everything together that made hopefully us work harder. And you were so grateful to see someone like Mark Frost or whoever it was. I think you had another one with Carol Royal.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate I know Carol because we have the same agent. So when she was coming in to work with her, we'd already spoken, and to see her on set, it was just like, oh, you know, because we'd seen each other like at dues with my agent and stuff. But then it was kind of weird because Carol was so lovely, so beautiful, and such a beautiful human. And then for my character to be kind of having an affair with her and kissing her and stuff, and it was like, oh God, no, that's weird. It's like she's a friend. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Kiss her. I mean, wow, what a privilege. But she's so beautiful, Carol. Still is. She did some beautiful stuff in it there. Really, really heartbreaking.
And Russell Tovey as well. I remember being in an interview scene with him. I remember coming out and going, wow, that kid, he's absolutely on the money. He is amazing.
Yeah, I did some night shoots with him, and there was a scene where he has to beat me up. He hits me with a tire iron, and just everything about the way he worked. And I remember, and I'm not saying this because I now know who Russell Tovey is, but I remember at the time, I actually took notes about the way he was working, because he would do things like, while everyone else was setting stuff up, normally I'd go out and just have a cigarette or whatever and go and get a coffee, you know, but he was walking the set. He was walking pace by pace. I'm going to be, and I could see him going through stuff. I'm going to be here, then I'm going to swing, then I'm going to step out, then I'm going to do this. And he was just working, just on his own, just doing his own little thing, you know, or he'd been off to one side. If the guys were setting up the lights or whatever, he'd step out of the way and he would just be quietly, and you could see him just going through the work. And I was just watching and thinking, oh my God, there's someone who's really taking this seriously. And it's just a reminder to me to, you know, not take it for granted, because we were doing it every day. It kind of, sometimes I think it was easy to slip into go through the motions. And I had to work really hard. I certainly towards the last 6 months or so I was there, I was having to work really hard to not allow myself to just go through the motions, to remember that every scene had importance, you know.
Well, like you were saying, how many yes scarves or, whatever the magic was in the CID scenes, you had to make something of it, because otherwise you'd leave in 2 hours and you'd be going, well, what was all that? So you really had to bring something.
Yeah.
It did make you work harder, actually, if you had less lines in something, I thought. And whereas if you had the big storylines and they were filtered through, I quite like doing that when you could see the end. There was the end, and you had to weave your way through. I love that side of it. Was it your idea to leave, or I can't remember how you left now? What was your story exit? Was that the Simpson one?
Yeah. Because so after I hit his head on the desk, Meadows comes in and says, what's going on here? He's what the hell? So he comes in, and then I think there's a shot. I think it was Chris Simmons up on the balcony of the CID room looking out, and you just see Vic Singh walking off. And then I think it was like 2 weeks later, the place got firebombed.
You weren't burnt alive. You see, he could return. No. If the bill ever came back, would you?
I think, well, never say never, but I think intellectually, in my head, I've always had this sort of thing of never go back to anything, because once you've done it, I see the whole thing as a job, and I see the whole thing as somewhere to learn and grow. So unless something changes dramatically, I think if I go back to a place where I've already worked before, I don't know what else I'm going to learn. I mean, obviously you never know, because you don't know the people that you're going to work with. They all bring something. You can learn something new from a new team or whatever. No, it's a weird one. The Bill and EastEnders are the two that people ask me, would you go back if they asked, And I've always said no, but with the caveat that you can never say never, because you just don't know. You don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I'm really fortunate at the moment that my wife works really hard, and we're kind of in a relatively secure situation. So there's not that same, I'm older, slower, there's not that same drive to work for the sake of work,
Yeah.
Yes, that work to live or live to work thing, and we're now in the work to live, mode.
That's nice. I think that is a nice way to be. Do you remember who you shared your room with in your dressing room?
Yeah, Matt Crompton.
Matt, lovely Matt.
Yes. Yeah.
Crikey, I haven't seen him. I think I went up Mount Kilimanjaro in 2002 with him, and I don't think I've seen him since. Maybe It's still there.
Oh, I remember that.
Do you remember?
Yes, I remember you doing that. Yes.
With Suze, Matt, and Simon Rousey.
Yeah.
Yeah, so 2002. So you didn't change rooms. It was always Matt.
It was. And then I remember it was actually the September the 11th, the day of the...
That day.
Yeah. We were on a roof in somewhere near Canary Wharf filming. And there was all this confusion because of people talking about something happening, and there was people downstairs. It was the roof of a pub, and there was people downstairs in the actual pub watching stuff happening up on the screens. And at the same time, members of the cast that we were up on the roof with and members of the crew were saying about something weird happening and people getting phone calls. And that was the day that they were phoning around the cast to call them in for interviews, to let them go, to let them know that they weren't going to be renewing their contracts. And so it was a really weird morning of confusing things of information.
Yeah.
I think it was Suze Maddox. I think we were up on this roof and she was saying about Matt. And he'd apparently been called into the office because he happened to be in the building at the time. And he'd finished filming something down at the base and they called him into the office. and gave him this whole spiel about, we're going to do our best for you. Thankfully, you've not been here that long, so you shouldn't have a problem getting other work and this, that, and the other. And he had to point out to them, he's been there 5 years. And I just remember talking to him afterwards, and I was like, Matt, are you all right? Are you all right? And it was like, how rude.
That was the PM office, and that got very busy, that office that day, didn't it? Because
it was.
Like you say,
and
it was happening, and it was all very confusing. And then there was all this real drama, and then,
Yeah. And I remember they phoned me, because I'd been in, the way it had worked out, I think I'd been working like 9 days straight. So I hadn't had a day off for over a week. And I was coming up to having 2 days off. Obviously, a lot of family stuff had been put off, and we were kind of trying to get stuff organised. And they phoned me. I'd finished filming. I think this was the day out. I think this was September 12th. We'd finished filming quite late, and the office called to say, could I come in tomorrow for a meeting? And I was like, no, I've been working 9 days straight. I am not, I've got stuff to do. I have a life.
Need to do some washing.
Well, yeah, stuff like that. Stuff like I've got nappies and shit to sort out. I haven't seen my kids in 9 days. I agreed that I'd have a phone call at 10 o'clock. And so that's when they called. And they were very apologetic. They're very sweet and said, that we're really sorry, but the storyline's come to a conclusion and blah, 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 and the character and this, that. And I said, that's absolutely fine. It's absolutely fine. And they said, oh, well, just, so we won't be renewing your contract, and come just check, when is your renewal date? So I'd said to them, well, actually, I renewed last week the contract.
For another 6 months. Another 6 months. Was it one of those?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So they were talking about having 3 or 4 episodes left to my story.
Yeah.
And I said, well, that's fine, because you're paying me for 6 months, whatever happens.
Have me.
Yeah, so I was really, for me, I know it wasn't the same for everyone, but for me, it was really fortunate the way that timing.
Yeah, that worked well.
The only downside was they did, and I understand why, but as a production company, they held me to that 6 months. So I wasn't allowed to do anything else. And it was unfortunate, because I did have 2 film offers that came in, and they wouldn't let me do it. Can't complain. I was still getting paid, so it didn't matter.
And you went on to EastEnders nearly, so pretty directly after that, 2003? Did you see Diane? Was Diane in that with you? Was she already there in Paris?
Yeah, she was. But I didn't have a lot to do with her character. She was another one of those people that when I was there, I was very conscious of how good she was. And it's more to do with how much, when I see people in the green room or whatever, and the way that people work when they're not on set. You get some people that just sit and chat and smoke fags and drink coffee, and you get others that are there working on their scripts or checking stuff with the crew and having conversations about, why is my character doing this and why is that? And she was one of those that was working. She was there to work. Absolutely. I always admired that in her.
Yeah.
Very good. Very
grafter.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent. And how was that time there?
Well, I just bought a moped when I was at the Bill. And then by the time I got to EastEnders, because I was in Southeast London and EastEnders is in Northwest London. So I upgraded to a motorbike. So I was basically driving a motorbike diagonally through London, 6 o'clock in the morning, which was fab. It was fabulous.
Yeah.
But no, it was great. It was great working there. Like anywhere, there was lots of politics, and I always get a bit, I struggle when a workplace gets political and it all becomes about, who likes who and who's in favour and all of that, and it stops being about the actual work. But no, I managed to avoid most of that. So yeah, it was a good time. And there was a great bunch I was working with. and, you know, the crew and the team, and just everyone was just really keen to get the job done and job done well, you know. So that's always a pleasure when you're in that sort of environment.
And were there any crew that you bumped into from the Bill days that?
Every day.
It's great, isn't it? When you start,
yeah. I mean, there was a few occasions where I'd get a bit confused where I was, because it'd be like, half of the crew would be from the Bill, and they'd be like, "Hold on, what we doing? What's happening?"
The difference of character between the Bill and EastEnders, how was that for you? Did you like the writing on EastEnders?
Yeah, I did, and I was very fortunate as well, because the way it all worked out is I had quite a lot of input on the character before we'd even filmed. They wanted to do a storyline where he was a compulsive gambler, and that would become a slow burn, long thread. And because it's something I had personal experience of, I managed to, you know, have quite big conversations with them about what it was like, what I'd experienced, and what people I knew had experienced. And the big thing was that we really, I'd said right from the beginning, what didn't want to happen was for him to sort of 1 minute having a bet in the bookies, and like a week later be addicted, you know. That it needed to be a slow burn, and that was always the intention. And then unfortunately there were other problems that occurred within the show to do with certain actors that had difficulties, and so schedules changed and storylines got compressed. And so in the end, it was like, I think it was the Monday episode, you see him have his first bet, and by the Friday episode he was betting the whole house on a horse. So it didn't quite work out as we wanted. but the intention was there. You know?
So the meetings were important to help you with your character. They gave you time. The Doctor Who clip that I was given, that's got to go down as the most iconic death with the plungers. That's fantastic.
I think I'm the only person to have been suckered to death by a Dalek.
You suffer. What about your kids? They must have loved that.
Do you know, it's weird. Neither of them are that sort of thrown by seeing me in stuff. And I think, again, due to their age, I think they've never been in the demographic of the stuff that I'm in. So it's actually rare that they've seen me in things, to be honest. It's never been a thing. I remember once with my eldest, when we were at the Bill, it just so happened the Bill was on telly one day, and my character on screen left the room just as I got home from work. And there was a brief moment where he was a bit confused because he was only about like 5 or 6 at the time. But that's been it, really. They don't really. I don't think they ever really pay that much attention to stuff I do.
Oh, well, they should be proud of you, Daddy. They should be proud. What did they not? None of them are interested in the business at all. Your kids, no.
No, I mean my youngest is for quite a while was working, and I don't really understand a lot of it, to be honest. But he was working within the music industry. With rappers and doing promotional stuff and video grabbing and stuff. I don't really understand it. So he was doing that for a bit. But my eldest works for an IT company, so he works in sales and marketing and stuff. And, you know, they're just different worlds that I don't understand.
No, and they probably don't understand your world. So that all works. I tell you, Ray Peacock's world is funny.
Yeah.
I started listening to it the other day, and I had it on in the background, and I was like, you have to go back and go back a few seconds. Like, did I hear that? That was that went on for a couple of years.
I think that was me having a rather private public breakdown that was over a couple of years. Yeah, I mean, it all started out as just a big bit of silliness, and then it seemed to, within a very small niche, get quite popular. For Ray and for Ed Gamble, who's the other comedian involved, I think it was, for them, it made sense to do it because it was always adding to their live comedy audience. You know, the same people who would listen to it would be the same people that would buy their tickets. So for them, it made sense doing it. For me, it made literally no sense to do it because I was always the butt of the joke. We linked a lot of the things to the kind of the stupid version of me. So we would exaggerate real things that had happened. But because there was this grain of truth in them, I think a lot of people found it quite difficult to separate the Raji James in the podcast to the Raji James in real life.
Well, Raji James didn't go to Anisha or live under the stairs.
No.
So there was, I think it was the time thing as well, like born in 1920, and then hang on, and I was like, what is this?
And I'm the child of Mr. Miyagi.
Bizarre. This special trilogy with Raji will conclude next time when we'll be talking about fame, self-tapes, and Raji takes part in roles play. So stay tuned for more gold dust. You have been listening to The Bill Podcast, presented by me, Natalie Rolls. Brought to you in association with GeorgeFairbrother.com, shop.saturdaymorningpress.co.uk and cityfiction.co.uk. The Bill Podcast is produced by Oliver Crocker, co-produced by Ben Adams, Glenn Allen, Rob Cook, Georgina Dark, Sarah Kuiper, Calvin Millward, Maz Mirablis, Alex Mockler, and Simon Wolfe. Executive produced by Isabel Allen, Ben Ashmore, Alana Dewar, Andrew Dyack, Paul Dunn, Tony Drury, Dan Evans, Laura Ewing, George Fairbrother, Luke Hegarty, Alan Hunting, Edward Kellett, James Ledane, Lucy McNeil, Gary Moncur, Danny Morris, Steph Morris, Claire Norbury, Laura Pinney-Fay, Michael Seeley, Tom Sherrington, Angel Stannard, Paul Statter, Patrick Stratford, Tom Wentworth, Michael Weil, and Sarah Went. The theme music is composed by Matthew Annis. You can unlock over 100 hours of bonus The Bill Podcast content as a patron, including cast and crew commentaries, reunions, reactions, pilgrimages, off-the-beat podcasts, and much more. Support us from $2.49 a month at patreon.com/The Bill Podcast.